Live.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Gnomon Twitch stream. For our event this evening, Rafael Grassetti and Dela Longfish, industry veterans, share their artistic journey. My name is Adam Hartel. I'm a recruiter here at Gnomon, and it's with great honor that I am going to get to host our guests this evening. Before I introduce them, I'd like to thank Lenovo for sponsoring this event. Lenovo helps Gnomon to be able to continue to bring free educational events to you. So big thanks to them. And for any of you who might be unfamiliar with Gnomon's educational offerings, or if you're only familiar with the Gnomon Workshop, we are a 3D art school in Hollywood, and we are training artists for careers in VFX, animation, and games. And we have an amazing online platform where our entire summer term and their individual classes are being offered, ranging from education for aspiring artists as well as training for industry professionals. So more info about that later at the end of the stream. But Ray, my colleague, and Miranda are both here on the chat to moderate the chat, to curate questions from our audience tonight for both Raf and Dela. And if you want to reach out to Gnomon regarding any of our educational offerings, my colleague Ray can share links for that as well. But now let's move on to the reason why we are here. I'd like to introduce our two artists that are with us. Dela Longfish has been working for the past decade as a visual development artist in the video game industry, on both established titles and new IP development for clients, including LucasArts and Sony Computer Entertainment. He's currently working at Santa Monica Studio, where he was the lead character concept artist on God of War. And we also have Raf Grassetti with us, and he's currently living in Santa Monica, California, working as an art director at Santa Monica Studio on the God of War franchise. He began his career in 2004, working as a character artist for cinematic, advertising productions, and toy industries, producing work for a great number of companies that include Hasbro, Marvel, and Ubisoft. Rafael was hired at Santa Monica Studio to work as principal artist on the God of War series. So with that, I want to say, Raf and Dela, thank you and welcome to the stream. It's great to have you guys here.
Well, thanks,
Adam.
All right.
Yeah, super stoked to be here.
Yeah. So, tonight's stream is it's about getting to know you guys as artists. We've done events with both of you in the past about some of your projects, about God of War. But I'd say that tonight is really an opportunity to get to know the artist behind the work. So with that, I just thought we could get started off. We'd love to hear from each of you, just kind of your artistic journey, from wherever you want to begin to, where you're at today. And I think we'll just kick it off, and I'll hand it over to you, Raf, and you can take it from here.
All right, I'll go first. For me, I'm originally from Brazil. I grew up in Brazil. My introduction to art was back in Brazil. I started. My interest in sculpting actually came first, then the digital, where I started just kind of playing with clay, getting my hands dirty with clay. Very early on, like creating characters with clay, and that kind of developed as I got introduced to 3D. I started to develop those skills in 3D. Like back then, like ZBrush wasn't a thing like it is right now. Like it didn't exist even back then. So for those who are a little older, I guess, being very used to basic packages like 3ds Max and Maya, like that's kind of how I started my career. And I guess the traditional sculpting got translated into the modeling of it when ZBrush came out. I don't know how many years ago, like that 10, 12 years ago when ZBrush came out. And I just kind of developed my skills using that tool. I guess slowly started to build my portfolio focused on characters, because when I first started, a lot of my stuff was I was more of a generalist. So I was studying animation, rigging, the whole pipeline. Because then when I started working on advertising, that was I was working with every step of the process, and then I focused my work in modeling in ZBrush, creating characters. And then, like you mentioned, Adam, like I slowly transitioned into different roles in the industry of digital sculpting. Let me see if I can share some of the work here before I talk too much without showing pictures. But I kind of transitioned some of the work into I guess digital sculpting for cinematics. I did a lot of work for toys. digital sculpting for toys, and I think the traditional kind of really played a big part on that. And even on working in studios now, I still do a lot of this traditional sculpting whenever I can. So that's kind of my backstory. Like I started going into the games industry after many years of working in the industry 3D industry, because as we all know, there's so many different ways that you can work as a digital artist in this industry. So I transitioned more into games. I worked for BioWare. Then I moved to Canada. From Brazil, I moved to Canada. I stayed in Canada working for BioWare, worked on the Mass Effect series, and I worked a little bit on the Dragon Age series. And then I moved to San Diego, came to the US 8 years ago to work for Sony. I moved to San Diego to work at VSG, which is a group's a studio where we do services for a lot of different studios in the Sony family. So when I was at the studio, I was hired as a character art supervisor for that studio, and I had a chance to collaborate on many different titles for the Sony groups, and that was I think kind of the learning curve really spiked when I was down there. So after a couple years at that studio, I got hired at Sony Santa Monica. That's where I am right now. So it's been you can tell me that it's been probably 6 years, 5 6 years.
Yeah, 2013, and Raf and I started almost within a month of each other. So we were both kind of had our backgrounds, but we were both kind of the new kids on the block. But it was a great studio, and yeah, it's hard to believe 7 years have flown by, because 2013, 2020, man, or
Oh,
just
yeah.
about 7 years.
Yeah. So that's I guess when we first got hired, we were hired for a different project when we first started, and then we transitioned into the God of War. And then a lot of that transitioning, the team changed a lot, and Dela and I had the chance to collaborate very early on the project. So a lot of the stuff, the models that you see in the game, we kind of worked together. I had a chance to build that team from scratch when we first started. So it was very fulfilling experience for both of us. For me, for sure. So you can see a little bit of that influence in my work. Whenever I had a chance, or we're pitching projects, pitching characters, trying to get a design approved, I still would like to go into clay and sculpt things whenever I can. Just help visualize the design, help prove out some of the design uh, intent that we have. That it's hard to translate sometimes in a meeting to a director. So a lot of that stuff was done in the project, which is super fun. This is kind of just a wide range of the things that I did on the project very early on, trying to develop some of the creatures for the game. A lot of the clay stuff that was very fun, and how that got translated into the kind of final digital sculpt, which is, of course, months and years later after that first idea is put on paper or on clay. A lot of meetings happen, a lot of discussions happens. So a little bit of that kind of translation to digital, and same thing for some of these characters where there's a lot of early exploration in ZBrush just to try to kind of develop the design. I like to do a lot of quick sketches and try to prove out ideas very quickly in ZBrush. That some of that gets translated into the final in-game model, but most of it is just a lot of explorations inside of ZBrush. ZBrush is very fast to be able to prove out ideas and just have fun and play out with some 3D elements. Here's just some more stuff that was done for the game. Again, like the breadth of stuff that we did for the game, like it's very creative. So it's very fulfilling for both of us, and it helped us, I guess, even improve on our own work, right? Like that's kind of what you're always looking for, that professional work that's going to give you that extra thing that you can kind of filter back into your own style. Yeah, this is some wide range of the things that I did for the game, and again, this is some early explorations on ideas, expressions, and then this is kind of a little bit more what we can show some of that today as well. A little bit of back and forth between myself and Dela, where Dela will have an idea, do a quick concept, quick sketch. We'll do some 3D sketching and kind of bounce it back and forth. Kind of do a paint over or go to Photoshop, play out some ideas, go back into 3D and finalize the sculpt. And Adam, feel free to jump in and interrupt me. I can
Yeah,
talk.
well, actually, no. You should keep going. I just did have a quick question for you, because you're I think you're mostly known as a digital sculptor, but I'm hearing you talk a lot about how much you love working in clay. Could you talk just a little bit about what, aside from the obvious differences, what the more subtle differences are for you? Why you might jump over to an actual piece of clay rather than jump to ideate in ZBrush?
For me, it's all about the feeling. It's very hard to capture that feeling, the clay feeling in the digital sculpt. There's something that comes with the technology and the tools that uh, it's hard to express the same way that you do it in clay. And sometimes seeing the piece in front of you will give you many different ideas of how to troubleshoot some stuff. And of course, you could do many things, nowadays with like 3D printing and some specific brushes to get some of that feeling into back to the design. But when you are sculpting clay, I think you are troubleshooting problems that you're going to have very down the line when you're working in 3D. You can kind of see like right there proportions, design breakups to see if it's going to read well. Where in 3D, it's part of it because of the tool that's so easy to execute on some techniques that you don't have in clay, like symmetry or kit bashing, or kind of dropping an image on top of it and just kind of trying to match. In clay, there's a lot more troubleshooting they have to do on the fly, where everything is spatially right there. So I think that's definitely part of the reason why I do clay. The other part of it is just to train the eye, where again it touches back a little bit on what I just said. But when you use clay, there are no shortcuts. Like you have to really understand proportions. There's no like move tool where you can kind of move the waist up and down and fix proportions. You have to be very methodical about like kind of committing to the process. Where in 3D is very easy to just and you see some of that on my own work where you just vomit everything into the 3D and then you like massage it into like a pretty turd. Like where in clay, like you just have to be very methodical about the process. So I think it helps train the eye a lot more than doing like sketches in 3D.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think just Raf on that one too. There's something too to just having, like, for the directors or anyone looking at, to actually like physically have that in front of them, because you can just see the different reaction. And I think a lot of times too, when there's even questions about how does this translate into 3D, how do we work it out in the round, like when they see it, there's still something about that tactile feel where they can connect to it really easily.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been trying to do a lot more in like digital 3D printing and all that stuff, because that definitely there's a impact on a team where you see that physical stuff. It kind of makes it real, literally.
I actually even remember just the sculpting stuff was always something great that you did. I remember pretty shortly after we had first started working together on God of War, it was kind of a skeleton crew. And we were kind of doing concepts and just trying to get all the characters going. And Raf would just go out, come back in with a fully sculpted troll or something like this. And it's like, wow, where did this come from? And at that point, it was like Raf said, trying to get any of those ideas going as much as possible. And we had the loose stuff, but when also people see that stuff too, there's almost this commitment and momentum that also gets built up for it. So even those early days, I think that had a big influence.
Yep.
That's cool. Raf, what can you tell us about the really early part of your journey? Like you said, you started out in Brazil, and then you jumped in. I think did you start professionally in Brazil, or was your first sort of professional gig when you moved to Canada, or kind of what was the beginnings like for you?
Oh no, that was definitely a long journey before we got to that, for sure. I started very young. I was very fortunate to have a computer and have access to internet. Like we say these things nowadays, it seems like that's the norm, but like back then I was very fortunate to have a computer where I could use 3D packages by the age of like 16. So when I was like 16, 17, I got introduced to like flash animations and all that kind of that good old stuff, and I started doing 3D for mostly focusing on websites early on, of like 3ds Max, just doing like 3D logos and those little things. And I got into a couple courses back then to like just get more deeper into the tool, like effects and rigging, animation. So I did a couple courses like that, like very small, like month or two courses to like just learn, because even back then it was very hard to get access to the information. especially if you're not in the US. So I was able to build a little bit of a portfolio when I was around 17 that I got started to work on advertising. So around 17, 18, I got my first gigs on advertising studios. And it was really, I was just thrown in the trenches and just try to survive, honestly. That's where I often say that was my school, literally, because I just learned everything on the job. And I was around very talented friends or professionals that I call friends to this day. They were really like my mentors. Working on advertising, I learned about everything in the process from like printed ads to like short movies to like feature films. So I did a little bit of everything, and then I kind of went towards more of the modeling because that was more of my passion back then. So when I built my portfolio, I started doing freelance for companies outside of Brazil, and it was mostly for cinematics for games. Back then, game cinematics were a huge market. I guess not so much these days because of the technology that the games are. A lot of the cinematics are in-game cinematics for these reveals, but back then, like Blur and Plastic Wax, Axel Studios, they still exist for these days, but like back then was a lot more work was demanded from them. So I started doing freelance for that, and Hasbro was one of the few companies where when I started working for them, I was able to stop my full-time work, and I moved into freelance full-time. And that was I don't know how many years ago, but to get to that point, it was easy 5-6 years working in the industry. To then start moving, I started working in the games because of I wanted to move out from Brazil. I wanted to work in the industry, and the only way I was going to get a visa back then, or at least in my head, the only way I was going to get a visa was to start working for games, because game studios are way more established. They need the people, they need the artists, so they more often hire people from outside of the country because of the demands of the industry. So I started building my portfolio on in-game characters, and that worked. That's how I got my visa sponsored, and I was able to move from Brazil.
That's great. And I know, even here at Gnomon, we've got a lot of international students. Mm-hmm. And on the Twitch stream as well, we've got people viewing from all over the world. Just in terms of your journey and what you learned from it, or any obstacles you had to overcome, what would you say to folks that might be living outside of the U.S.? Not that the U.S. is the only place you can work, but I think a lot of times the Los Angeles area, Canada, those kind of places are places that you need to kind of break into. Yeah. What, from your perspective, could you share from someone living outside, or maybe feeling like they're living far away from the industry, who really wants to do this?
Yeah, so like even back then, like Gnomon was the other option for sure, right? Like because you can, you could come to the US and be a part of that, and be in the courses and everything, and try to get sponsored that way after the course. But like even back then, I still had access to courses online. Like Gnomon had the DVDs back then. Now everything is basically online, so people should definitely use as much as they can of that resource. I try to say a lot of like for people to try to get the basics down first before they invest the money into a bigger course. But investing it, I still do it to this day. Like even yesterday, I bought 2 new courses that I'm gonna just go through it, because the technology is evolving so quickly, and you have to keep up. Even if you don't, if you're not like doing the work itself, you just have to see what other people pipeline, learn from everybody. These days, I think nowadays there's so many different events where people should dump a crazy amount of information that even if you grasp like 10% of it, is like you're going to be a so much better artist. So yeah, definitely my advice for people who are outside of the US is just to try to get as much as they can. There's a lot of stuff in Gumroad as well. I think every source of information is valid. Try to get a course where it is built from beginning to end, because I do see a lot of, especially because I take a lot of video tutorials where some of the stuff might not cover everything that you need to know. A lot of things are very specific to the techniques. So if you are a little bit more advanced, like I think you can take a lot of those, and just everything would add to your pipeline. But if you're starting, just make sure you get something that has a beginning, middle, and end. And usually schools like Gnomon or some other schools have a very established course where you're not going to get lost. Because what I see a lot is that people will get frustrated if it's something as more advanced. They than what they can take. Like even myself, sometimes you take something from like Houdini or something that's like I don't have the basics as strong as some of the other softwares, and I'll just get frustrated. So just make sure you get something where you can follow. Literally, like if you are a beginner, like step by step, that you can execute on the tasks. Like do not worry about the creative input or that you're gonna like make a portfolio out of this course. You just have to follow step by step so you can really make sure you are learning as you go through, and then you can kind of be on your own and start creating. And that's why a lot of things that I do these days, where it's like a lot of quick sketches, and people see it be like, "How the hell you did this so fast? Like it takes me 5 months, 6 months, or 2 months." Or it was because of that, like right, like you just copy a lot, just execute. So when you're creating it, the execution is out of it, right? You're just creating it. So I think a lot of people try to mix those two things and you get lost on the process. So that's we can talk more about that too in the future, but that just try to understand where you are.
Yeah, super good advice. Thank you very much. If you, I think you've kind of gotten through your story, right, Raf? I don't want to cut you off. Okay, so we've got Dela here too. It's a chance to get to know you, Dela. I know you have a very different kind of a journey. So yeah, the floor is yours, sir.
All right, thanks. My I kind of just started out probably like everyone listening to this and all the artists is just a big fan of TV, movies, comics as a kid. And then I think one advantage I had just even being younger is my dad's an artist and my mom had taught artists, I think in high school or grammar school. And I didn't actually get like a teaching from my dad on how to like kind of do this stuff, but there was always that sense that it's okay to become an artist and make a career out of it. So there wasn't that kind of that concern or that worry growing up. And they were like, if you want to do it, then that's go ahead, you just commit to it and you can do it. I kind of just had a lot of fun growing up, just sketching and all of that. And then after high school, just went to an art institute, and it was a pretty decent education. And back then, I was going more for like a freelance illustrator, trying to kind of take that route. The game and entertainment stuff definitely wasn't at the visibility to outsiders as it is kind of today. So I went there, and it was a decent education. But then I came back to the States, back to California, down to San Jose State, and went to San Jose State. And a good thing, to kind of like to Raf's point, is it was just a lot of hardcore fundamental stuff. So all those basics that you need, you learn. And I literally kind of probably got about, in the first 6 months, I'd learned more than 3 years at the other place. But a lot of that is because the teachers were hardcore traditionalists and really understood kind of the skill set and the need for artists. So like Raf said, having all that background, just then once you have the creative side come into it, just frees you up to kind of really show and design whatever you want to without having to worry if the anatomy is right, the perspective, the gesture, all that kind of stuff. So I learned a lot there. And then in my senior year, we had a guest instructor come in and teach kind of like our BFA class, and that was Jeff Sangali, and he was an art director over at Sony. And we really hit it off. And there's something just about, I think certain individuals just kind of really connect, and kind of everything that he was kind of saying to me and getting across just really set in and was really clicking in a way that other stuff took me a little longer and more time to kind of understand. But we developed a kind of good relationship with that. And after San Jose State, I actually got hired by Jeff at Sony in Foster City. So my first gig was doing video games with Sony. It was a great learning experience. I think for me, it was the best time to just really get my look at what it really was like to be in a studio and the reality of it. It was eye-opening and fun and exciting and crazy and scary, all at once. And I was learning a lot, but then development on the project got canceled and R&D was shut down. So then I was looking for a job. Again, the experience was great, but I was kind of bummed out I didn't have anywhere to kind of work at the moment. And then Jeff had kind of landed over at LucasArts and then brought me on over there. So I moved over up to San Francisco and started working with him over there. And the team that he was leading up was tasked with just designing brand new intellectual properties, so brand new IP. and to kind of churn it out as quick as they could. And that for me was really eye opening because basically, for a concept artist, that's just nonstop idea generation. And at the time, basically, what we had is it's set up so it was every 3 to 4 months to come up with a whole new idea, story, cast of characters, gameplay mechanics. And we were a really small team, so we kind of had to be fast and nimble as we were working with that stuff. And then on the creative side, as an artist, what my art director wanted to do was make sure that each art style changed and matched whatever the tone and the gameplay of the project was. So what that meant for me is every 3 months I had to change stylistically what I was doing, and I wasn't used to that at all. It was like had more of a realistic kind of base. But it's like, okay, now we have to do like a feature animation. Now we have to do a graphic novel. Next 3 months is something inspired by Japanese toys. And that whole gambit, and that it was one of those things that was like super intimidating at the very beginning, especially because it's not super easy to go in between styles, and it's not something I would definitely like suggest people to do or recommend. But the speed at which it was going, things were coming so fast. I really didn't have the time to think that it was too hard. I just had to put pencil to paper and keep going. And one of the things I kind of learned from that is just sometimes it's better just to kind of get the ball rolling and not kind of outthink yourself. And it went from kind of poor designs to okay designs to maybe good designs. And I just realized kind of the more I was doing it, the more comfortable I became with it. And even to today, I'm kind of comfortable a lot more jumping in between styles. And we can even talk about this later, but I even do like graphic breakdowns for character sets on big projects that are more realistic. But that was just a wildly creative atmosphere to be in. It was just all about the idea generation and how you do that and how you prototype. So that was just this great kind of like fire to kind of be born in with that stuff from a concept point of view.
Yeah, and we've got your screen share up on the stream as well. Did you have any artwork you wanted to kind of show from your journey, or
yeah? So
put up for you?
Yeah, what you're seeing here is some of the stuff I did on God of War, and we had kind of shared a little bit of this earlier when we had talked at Gnomon, and just some of the other kind of character stuff I was doing as well. And then this may not look like it's from the same artist, but this is kind of some more of the stylized work that I was actually doing. And even though I was jumping between styles, the great thing I think I kind of learned is really just the core thread of just good design, regardless of what stylist you're kind of engaging in or trying to create. There's still a level of design that all of them require. And the funny thing is sometimes I'll get asked, what do you like more, stylized or realism? To me, it's all the same. I like kind of good stories. And the funny thing is the stylized shapes actually help define my silhouettes for my realistic stuff. And my realism brought a level of believability to even the stylized things that both really kind of helped each other raise it up. And I do a lot of shape development in my very first explorations. I think Raf knows sometimes I just start with just a lasso tool and kind of fill that stuff. But it was really kind of all born out of that first IP stuff we were doing at LucasArts. And then after we had done some of that IP stuff, some needs at the studio had changed and they needed some help on the Force Unleashed video game. They were on the second one.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And they asked me and Jeff to come help. And that was great because that was the first Star Wars project I got to ever touch in any way. And it was in a minor way because they already had a great concept team that was already in full swing. But I grew up loving Star Wars. The first movie I remember seeing with my dad is Empire Strikes Back. So I just had this love for it, and just kind of getting to, put your foot in that sandbox was amazing. And then since I was more of kind of a junior member at that time, I learned a lot from the artists that were there. They were super helpful. But another project in the studio had started to ramp up as well. And since I was junior, I got asked to help on that one, and that actually is what had become Star Wars 1313.
Okay, yeah.
And so that was kind of even going deeper into the Star Wars universe and design set as an artist for me, and it was fantastic. I can't go into a lot of details because it didn't come out, but we did do a trailer that we showed at E3, which is kind of the Comic-Con for games. And that's out there. I think it's on YouTube and everything. So that stuff was announced to the public. So I can't go into specifics about what we're working on, but creatively, it still hit all those great things you want as a concept artist, is things that are familiar and strange and fantastic and believable. And when you're working on a property like Star Wars, you've got main heroes, aliens, creatures, spaceships, guns, planets, everything in a world like that kind of demands to just get a concept, pass, and design intent kind of wrapped around it. So that was good. And again, it was going great. And the new IP stuff for me was fantastic. I learned a lot, and I'm still super close with all those guys. The tough part, since it was so rapid, a lot of it didn't get to come out, see the light of day. So again, it was probably like 3 years of work that I wasn't able to show. The Force Unleashed was great, and 1313 had been going really good too, full steam. We were really happy with where it was at. But then that project didn't come out as well. And I think one thing we can talk also a little bit later, but one thing I try to do in my career is, especially for myself, is kind of measure the validation for myself is just through my growth as an artist and who I get to work with and who I get to meet. I think if I had tied it more to the release of projects, it would have been harder to kind of stomach. But I look at my growth as an artist and the projects I get to work on, even if they don't come out creatively, as a way to just kind of measure where I'm at.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of the industry that a lot of people who are aspiring towards it don't realize, is that I think especially in pre-production, you work on a lot of stuff that never sees the light of day.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of something that has to be weathered. How did you get through a season of putting all of your energy into these projects, and learning from them, but not necessarily being able to associate yourself with something that was released?
It was tough. I actually had done a talk a while ago, but it was kind of like finding the silver lining. As one door closes, another one kind of opened. And for me, that continued to happen. Like the Lucas Labs, the IP stuff we were doing was fantastic. And even though the shift in the studio happened, I think they were still able to see that the team was doing relevant work. And then because of that, we got asked to work on The Force Unleashed. Sorry, I don't want to get this all mixed up. And that was a short stint, but then that opened the doors to work on Star Wars 1313. And that was great. We were really doing some new creative stuff on that. That door closed. But then what happened, it was kind of the silver lining to that is our art director, Christian Alsman, on 1313, was working at ILM, where he was our art director, and they had just announced that they were starting up the new Star Wars movies again. And through that, me and another artist, Colin Fix, were asked to interview over there. And we both got brought on in the early development of The Force Awakens. And that was an amazing time, because all of a sudden, I love Star Wars, but even more, like every concept artist I admire and really knew and followed at that time was kind of there in that studio. So it was good to be able to be included on those meetings. And if they would have said, "Hey, we need a crates guy for Star Wars," I would have been like, "Yo, I got you, like whatever you need." But they were really open to let kind of me help out, hear the early story pitches, and at that point there wasn't a full story by any means. So it was kind of more of this, what if they restart the Star Wars universe? What could it be? And my first day was, they said, "Hey, just wait in this room. We'll be in here and talk with you." And it was the room that had all the pitch work up. And it was just floor to ceiling images. And I mean, you just feel like a kid in a candy store, and I felt like very lucky to be there. And then you get to see how some of the professional artists that I admired were working. Not only they were working, how great they were, and then just also the speed of the turnaround, because that was the first movie project I ever got to be any part of. So that cushions something like 1313 not coming out.
Yeah, for sure. And what was it? I mean, what was it like for you? And I love the idea of seeing the silver lining, right? I think that's a big part of creativity, is you can't become bitter. You can't sort of lose heart in that sense. What was it like for you transitioning into a project that would, kind of like would have been one of your dreams to work on? And I think really the question I'm trying to ask is, all of the stuff all the momentum you'd been accumulating up to that point. Mm-hmm. How did all of the work you'd done up to that point help fuel you and kind of help pay off in that situation?
As far as like working at,
Yeah, working on a Star Wars film, kind of
that
jumping
was
into
great. I think even like you can look at some of the work and maybe like stylistically it doesn't fit. The stuff we were doing for 1313 was definitely more realistic, as you can see in the trailer. But I think that basically everything I'd gone through in the past is still like all the building blocks I used to kind of take advantage. So the skill set was still the same. And like the foundation stuff Raf was just talking about, that'll help you in any situation. So it's not like I'm just good at this one avenue. I've got this broad skill set that can help me take any kind of uh, design challenges that come down and kind of wrap my head around them. And I think some of the stuff like being at the IP team is just being in a scrappy situation where you really just have to let your artwork speak for yourself and really let that drive it, and just be in that sense where you're not going to let anything kind of stop you in it. Your success at some point you can kind of be in charge of how it affects you and how it doesn't, and how that will actually help move you forward.
Yeah, I think that, and this is kind of fluid, so I know that you may have some more stuff that you want to put up on the screen or whatnot, but I think that brings us to a really good point of kind of talking to both of you guys as we were getting ready for the stream. One of the things we talked about was, so much focus can be on the studio project and the things that you've done in studio, but, as artists, you need to stay fresh, you need to stay sharp outside of the studio. Especially, I would guess, when you're going through a tougher situation professionally, how do you keep that inspiration up? What kind of stuff are you guys doing on your own? What are your passion projects?
So I can start. So one thing I'll do. It's a big question.
Sure. Yeah, we can narrow it down. So you can take it wherever you want.
Yeah. No, so I think some of the stuff I do is I always had liked sketching even before being in the industry. It was a way to just kind of decompress or chill. So I'll kind of do that at the end of the day. And usually whatever I'm working on at work, I'll do the opposite when I get home, just to kind of stay creatively fresh so I don't get too fatigued on just one aesthetic that I'm working with. Because that is an issue that for an artist, if you're working on something a long time, there is an element of fatigue that can come in. I think the best thing you can do is just you won't always be in a situation where it will never happen, but just being aware of when it does, kind of those things that you can do to kind of break out of it. A lot of stuff to stay fresh is also kind of working with, people like Raf and other team members at the studio. We kind of can joke around and laugh and all that stuff. And, another part is just having a sense of humor and looking at the big picture where everything goes. I think sense of humor has gotten me through a lot of stuff. But I have some sketches I can kind of go through too, just if you want examples of that.
Yeah, let's do it.
I also showed these just as an example of if you want to go to school and learn and be educated too. So before I started, oh yeah, you want to do that? Okay.
Yeah, we can jump back and forth. It's fine.
All right. So this is where I'd say that kind of creative core was there, but the education and the knowledge and the foundation stuff wasn't really evident. But love comics, wasn't too familiar with anatomy, perspective, symmetry, any of that kind of stuff at this point. And but like I said, into comic books, and it was one of those things. I think, uh, depending on where you go and the kind of the motivation you have, if you take that kind of chance to really study and get involved, and you can really kind of evolve. I wish I could say this stuff was done when I was like 5 years old, but this was like high school, early college. But then just to show you the transition, again, I love sketching. I've been doing it since I was little. I still do it now. Every now and then, I still be able to make time for it at the studio. But I'll just kind of create stories and characters and kind of come up with those designs. So I was coming up with this stuff as more of a design for basically a West Coast ghost story, and taking more of those influences from the West Coast, and doing a ghost story kind of based on that. And this is kind of like the Day of the Dead, but also based on like the California tribes and the natives out here.
And how much, sorry to interrupt, how much of a fast forward is this from, say, like the sketches you showed in like high school to now you've got these really, beautifully rendered, very nicely designed and realized sketches? Where are you at this point?
It's like 1 month, 2 months. No, this is probably, this is probably like 5 years at least. And then, you kind of get a handle on it, you start to be a little more comfortable, and it still grows. But I think the one thing like Raf mentioned about is being able to learn and put yourself in that space to learn. You really can kind of put yourself, step outside your comfort zones, and then you get to grow. And I've seen people who maybe had like a really good talent or ability that don't take advantage of it. And I've seen people who maybe you might think aren't as skilled, but then they dedicate themselves, and you just see the growth happen a lot faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, I just kind of go through these things and make characters, and I think Raf and I will talk a little bit about this further. But even if I do something that's skeletal like this, it's like, well, maybe he's a detective with a gun, and how does the gun look skeletal? Maybe he's got a car, can make this car look skeletal, and just play with those themes and add those bits of history in it.
And this is all traditional sketching, right? This is it. This is straight out of your sketchbook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The day-to-day stuff I do is all like almost like 90% digital at the studio and stuff. But this is just kind of a nice break for me when I get home. So I figured more of the personal stuff, I'd show a little bit more of this.
Well, and like Raf was saying, with the traditional sculpture helping to inform his digital process, how do you find the relationship between when you're sketching at home in your sketchbook, just you and the pencil and the paper? How does that help inform your workflow when you're in studio?
I love it. I mean, I find out that I work the same, even though it's done a little differently. And part of me just loves the drag of the pencil on the paper, the eraser. There's no Control Z. I'll basically how I work in digital. I kind of ideate different uh, design options as I'm working. When I'm sketching, I kind of do the same thing, but almost like right over each other. And what I'm trying to do is really find those shapes. I'm a big fan of shape design, so uh, I just kind of see what emerges. There's sometimes you have an idea immediately, and then other times the design kind of grows in a different direction than you ever expected. And sometimes it's the overlay of some line work on top of other ones that inspire direction. But I think I still love costume design, the fabrication of stuff, the history, try to get all those kind of little elements into the stuff.
Yeah, that's something we've talked about before in the history side. Like you're also you're a bit of a book nerd too. Like if you're getting into a subject that you're designing around, like you'll go all in and like get books and research it and stuff. Yeah.
Well, I still remember, back in when I was like at San Jose State, I go to the library if I'm designing like a pirate key. There's a whole book on just keys and just going through all that stuff. So I still have the days of going to the library for reference. Yeah, sometimes, like I said, I can get a little overboard with that stuff. But this is kind of more stuff like it can take something that's like a character like a witch and do something that feels maybe a little beautiful or contrast what's frightening with something a little different. And that contrast usually helps to create a lot of interest in a design. And even in creature stuff, trying to always add a little bit of believability. Like, does it kind of feel like it might be a realistic animal, even though it doesn't look one-to-one? And doing that. And I think this is kind of a good breath of some of the sketches I have. And I was like, I wasn't doing so good. I wasn't applying myself. I got home. I was like, oh, it's just, the teachers, this, and, it's okay. And my dad just kind of looked at me. He was like, that's bull crap. And I was like, what? And he's like, look, son, like, I'm an artist and a teacher. I know both sides of this. They can teach you everything and give you everything there. But if you don't have the motivation to do it, then it's pointless, but it's on you. And that was just enough to just be like, you're right. Like, if I want to do this, then that motivation has to come from me. And I think that's one thing. Like you and Raf was talking about, there's so many options out there for learning today. It's astounding. But then it takes that part from the artist that an instructor can't teach is the motivation and stuff. So that was the biggest thing that just really kind of kicked me into gear.
Yeah. And another question, maybe a little bit less related to where we just were, is like, one of the things we've got today, and having both you and Raf on the stream, is we can talk about the relationship between what you're doing, which is conceptualizing, designing with your artwork. When you're doing that, and that you're doing it for 3D modelers and for people that are going to need to sculpt out these characters, what are you thinking about? And what is important to that process for yourself to make sure that becomes more possible down the pipeline?
Like I said, I think the big thing is just looking at the big picture, understanding how it's used in game. Also, on my side, is being aware of the limitations or both technical for a character, because I also would think, because I can't get into a situation where I'm like, oh, I made this amazing thing, but technically, or for whatever reason, we can't achieve it in engine or in the final product. Because I actually feel at that point that I've failed in the design if I create something that we can't do. So I have to take all that stuff into consideration. Um, and then back at LucasArts, along with the concept, I started modeling as well. And that's when you start really seeing how your 2D stuff translates into 3D. And after having that experience, I'm like, I need to go apologize to everyone I did paint over for in the past, because none of that made sense now. So I think
So really,
understanding
yeah,
that.
totally. So it's super beneficial for a 2D artist to do some learning in 3D just to understand.
Yeah, I think
that
it'll help you understand if, and also kind of protect the idea and the design. And if you understand how it gets executed on, you can make sure that if there's any problems, you can achieve as best you can whatever the director and art director.
I think Raf has some more of his personal work he wanted to share and talk about.
No, I'm done now. That's it.
You can't work like this.
Come on, guys. No, I guess the question, like we were talking about, even I guess the personal work, right? And to me, it's not so much about kind of offloading the kind of the frustrations, or if you're frustrated on your full-time job. Is that there's so much you can learn when you do personal work. First of all, when you are at the studio, and I see a lot of young students or professionals that get frustrated when they first get a job, right? When something is not going the way they expected. When you are at the studio, you are serving a bigger picture, right? You are doing a service to the project, and sometimes it's a lot more just execution on the task. If you are years and working on the same project, you can get kind of fatigue of like the style. So like I just try to always keep creative on my extra time, my side time. Try to study different things that I don't have the chance to do in the studio. Like most of the times, you get hired because of a specific skill that you've been developing throughout all these years, and you don't have you don't have the freedom to just try different things, to just improve your skills on different pipelines and different departments. So being able to do that on your personal time is super valid. I think I still try to do it to this day. And some of these works I forgot to show when I was sharing my screen, but like, talking about personal work, this is some of the stuff that I've been doing on the past year or past couple of years. Where again, just trying a little bit more of my own designs, like I'm going a little bit more creative on things that I like to do. Again, just being comfortable with speed, the deliveries. Like Dela said, like getting fast is like a pretty good skill to have when you are a professional. So a lot of these things are quick sketches and then painting on top. So studying a lot more of the 2D and mixed with 3D and just the things that I like to do. Like some of the things that I would probably never get a chance to do professionally. So why not just do it like as personal work that might spark some sort of interest in the future. So again, these are just some of the stuff that I've been doing online for those who are following around, and just trying out some stuff, just having some fun. Like I think that's the other part of it, right? Like if we same thing for Dela. It's just like we do projects together and we collaborate, every day. But when we get the chance to do something that we both like and we're both inspired, and there's a little spark of creativity that we can just do it, like just having fun. Like that's the whole reason why we do these things. And sometimes it can get lost on the day-to-day, the meetings, the people relationships, and the corporation. And so these things are just a little things to keep it fun and creative. That's, I think, to me, that's all about. And I wouldn't be at the studio that I am, for the same reason I bounced around so many years, if we weren't having fun, right? And
Actually, I just had a question come in from the chat. We won't take, this isn't the question time, but I think it's really pertinent to where you are.
Yeah.
One of our viewers wanted to know, I think it's the Yoshimitsu, the samurai.
Mm-hmm.
That was a personal project, yes?
Yeah. They
were curious to know, and I think this is a great question because you're also working full time in studio and you're doing a personal project on the side. How long did it take you to finalize that design?
I tried to time box my personal work. I think I can do it. I've been doing it, from the beginning of my career, but I have very specific goals when I time box something. So that one took me, at night, I'll say like about 2 weeks, like after work, and then a little bit more on the weekend. So like a couple hours every day to get it to that point. Yeah.
Yeah, so even still sharpening your speed while you're working on your own. Yeah.
It's
Did you have any other projects you wanted to walk us through before we move on to the next subject, Raf?
Well, just to your point too, it's not even like sharpening the speed. It's also like there is part of a commitment when you're working in 3D. It's very easy to just try ideas around and just spend months and months. So I think just practicing that commitment that we talked about at the beginning of the stream with like clay and designing in paper. So I think that it's practicing that speed of like the commitment on the design for that. So when I commit to something and I've been doing over and over and over, it gets a lot easier to get something good out of the gate. Like I don't share everything that I do that don't turn out the way I want it to be. Like I have so many different tries that I start a project. Like even this week, I start 2 or 3 different projects, and I'll start something and it's just not the way I want it. So I'll put it to the side and I'll start something else. But again, that commitment to like, I think that's why I can do projects fast now, because I just execution, and then some of them turn the way I want to be, some of them not.
That's really encouraging to hear too, that like, a lot of times you follow somebody on Instagram and you only see what they post, but you don't see all the stuff that they start and go, no, I gotta scrap this, move on to the next thing.
100%.
Yeah. Did you, okay. So I, in preparation for this stream, you guys were telling me that you are working on a side project, the two of you,
Yep.
that you wanted to be able to talk about with us on the stream, which is really, really cool. So if you guys don't mind, I think I'll let you guys sort of take it from here and lead us into what you'd like us to know about this sort of secret side project, I guess. Yeah.
So we started something. I mean, we've been working on stuff together for the past few years. So, but more recently, we started something with a little bit more of a brainstorming the ideas and creating a story, and then working towards the final goal of creating some sort of original IP or idea. And we were working towards this year, but with everything that's been happening this year,
2020 is a wild year for sure.
Yeah. So he's going to take us a little bit longer, but I think this illustrates a lot of we were talking today of that collaboration between being the creative process back and forth on ideas and stuff like that. So we selected one of the characters that we were working on to share with you guys. I don't know if you want to take over that one.
And I think, like Raf said, it really just kind of started out of the idea of, like Raf said, we love this. We love characters. Can we kind of come up with an idea that just really takes advantage of a vast range of characters in the world? And one of the things that's great working with Raf over all this time is we've just developed a great back and forth working relationship. So it can be something that's just like a scribble that you would never show, in a studio setting, but he can get it, and likewise we can kind of go back and forth. So it just starts out kind of just with the seed of an idea, and at that point we really don't even know where it's fully headed or going yet, but just to start exploring and just see, hey, does this grab traction? There's something here that we like. Are there elements in these characters that can open up to a bigger story? And I think we were both kind of thinking like a little bit sci-fi potentially, but not really sure where that would even go. So a lot of it is just kind of,
these are some of your early iterations you were kind of thinking about it, Sean. Yeah.
I think that this was just kind of like that what if stage, like let's see what happens as we kind of go through this. And the nice thing is just seeing where an idea kind of goes, because sometimes it'll lead you either way, somewhere you didn't expect. Other times it'll kind of be a dead end, but you can kind of still just kind of play around in that space.
This is where we have a lot of back and forth of just trying to establish where they living in, what kind of materials they have accessible, who's building these things for them. So there's a lot more just reference gathering that happens during this time. And we do that a lot at work as well, where we're just trying to create model sheets. And most of the times we're both on the same page, but we just want to have a solid guideline. So if there's any confusion, that we can kind of clear out right there. So even for personal work, we go ahead and then just do some of those things, just establish the pipeline, because every day counts, especially when you're doing personal work. And we don't want to just be redoing stuff, when someone's not happy or things like that. So this is just one step forward, just throwing some textures, getting all that fine detail in there, start doing poly painting ZBrush. I've been doing a lot of my personal work in ZBrush, just getting all the textures in there, and I use a lot of photos and kind of drag and drop a bunch of quick information in there. Same thing for the face, trying to get that feel, kind of tell the Star Wars influence. And then this is just kind of a final, not final because we're not done with this yet, but this is where it is, and we're just kind of doing the same thing across the whole cast of just doing a bunch of I'll do something where Dela's jumping into something else, and then I'll pick up sketch something else and then throw it his way, and so this way we'll build kind of the entire cast of characters and try to take everything to completion that way.
Yeah, so it's great. I mean, it's the nice thing too is just kind of seeing the back and forth and just the love for the characters and where we can kind of go with it. A lot of it is just us kind of having fun on designs that we like and seeing how they kind of fit together and get realized. And we have a few other characters, but I think that's something we're still waiting more down the road to kind of put together. But it's been a great experience and just fun, just even the back and forth.
Are you guys at a point yet where you can share anything about the intent of this? I mean, is this an IP you're working on? Is it intended for game? Is it something you don't want to talk about right now, or?
Well, there's a couple of ideas we have in place, but initially it was more for a book that we're putting together.
Very cool.
Yeah, but all that can spark different ideas down the line. Like as we do everything, I feel that the presentation is there, and we are building these things, thinking of what it could be if it's expand to different ways to showcase the work. So it could turn into something else. But initially, we were working towards a book for sure.
That's awesome. And it's so rare. Like when you were talking about, a product of a studio, you never get to jump into the middle of that process that you guys are in right now. Like you never get to see the design work, at the moment that it's happening. It's usually a few years later after everything's done. So it's really neat to kind of see you guys in the middle of it and what your thought processes are. And of course, you've developed this great teamwork together working in studio, and I'm sure all of that's fueling what you're doing here. Do you find that the influence goes the other direction as well, like ideating together on a personal project? Do you find that helps augment your professional process in studio?
I think we have a lot of kind of like similar ways. Just our working relationship is also kind of part of like our normal relationship, and I think any job I start, even at this point in my career, the first part is just earning trust with my leads, my peers, and the rest of my team. And I think Raf and I kind of have that back and forth at a spot where it's easy to just kind of productively really talk about a design, even if something isn't working or we have a disagreement. We just respect each other's opinions, and a lot of the feedback kind of comes with suggestions on how to drive it forward. And so I think that kind of spirit and chemistry is still kind of 100% prevalent in what we're doing in the personal stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's a lot about kind of letting go and trusting the others' opinions on these things. And then you learn that, especially collaborating, a lot of the times in the studio, everything, there's always someone that's going to have that's getting paid to have an opinion that matters more than what you have. But in these things, it's a collaboration, right? Like it's a back and forth, and you have to learn to trust what the other person wants to do, and that definitely helps not just our relationship, but with everything else. Like just learning that trust and working towards the goal. Like sometimes it's just more about getting it done and being happy with it, because you might not see it when you're working on it, but then after a while you'll look back and you kind of like, oh, this is cool. Like I don't know, like if we were just trying to get it everything that we wanted every time, then it wouldn't even be a thing. Like we just have to just execute and let it be what he wants to be almost.
Yeah. Well, wherever this goes, but with the talk of it being a book, this is a book that I would love to see. I can't wait to see where this goes. And maybe there's a chance to get more updates, further down the road. Before we the conversation shifts, is there anything else you guys wanted to share about this project?
So I think that's
Uh,
it. Go ahead, Dela.
oh no, I was just going to say this is kind of just like a glimpse of where we're at, and we're still kind of
Mhm.
working out a few things. So I think we don't have 100% idea where it's going, but we got kind of the direction headed. So uh, yeah, I think down the road, definitely expect to see more on this. But right now, it's just for us to kind of getting the foundation. The roots are growing in the ground for us for what it will be.
Mhm.
Awesome. And are you guys ever considering, further down the road? I'm sure as you're going to be building more interest for it, are you eventually going to be, utilizing some platform to kind of share where the process is and kind of build hype towards it as you come to completion?
I think definitely when we have enough material, like we'll try to reach out
Awesome.
to a lot of different platforms and try to start putting a little bit out there. I think we both have been in the process of marketing something and getting it shipped and all that, and like we are working with our own schedules of like trying to hit certain dates. So hopefully, we were working to towards Lightbox, but since that's not, who knows what that's going to end up being. If it's a more of that online platform, maybe there's something there as well, but uh, there's still a lot of work to do for sure.
Yeah, I think
Cool.
also just getting it to a point where whatever kind of medium we go to talk about it, that the work is supported and shows good on that as well.
Yeah. And thank you so much for sort of pulling the curtain back, for us to kind of like jump right into the middle of your process. It's been awesome to see. So our sort of on the heels of that, wanted to take a little bit of time tonight before we, get to talking with our viewers and taking on some questions and stuff like that. We have a lot of aspiring artists, people out there who would love to be aiming towards, doing the kind of stuff that you guys are doing professionally. Some of them are, pursuing education currently. Others are looking for education, but they're all, working and creating. What kind of advice do you guys have for aspiring artists? And I've got a few prompts if you'd like me to kind of throw some questions out. So the first one to kind of get us going, get the wheels turning, is what kind of advice would you share with your younger self earlier in your artistic journey? If you could sort of travel back in time and meet yourself at the beginning, what would you say to yourself? I don't know who wants to take. Yeah.
I think a big part for me is I kind of as an artist it kind of maybe clicked a little later for me, maybe just dialing in a little sooner. I think I had the idea of that's where I wanted to go, but just getting that perspective, and then I would have just told myself, hey man, like some stuff might not come out, but you can still grow regardless of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I think for me, I'm happy with the path that I took, and I would definitely tell myself to kind of focus a little bit more on the characters. I'll say, not that I didn't do that, but I early on I was just all over the place, like just trying all kinds of stuff, and I think that definitely helped and helped where I am today, and a little bit of the things that I do right now is definitely like kind of collecting what I did before, but definitely early on you want to try to find where you want to be and kind of go head down on that just to get um, hired on the with the place that you want to work on a little faster. Like make sure you are doing the things that you love. Like if there's one thing that if you love like God of War or Overwatch or whatever the thing is, like make sure you're working towards that goal. And I think that was a little hard to establish, at least for me back then, where you just like find the people who are doing the work or find the people who are working at the places where you want to work on and try to like get inspired by what they're doing and try to mirror a little bit of the things that they do. So your portfolio would be kind of more towards that. And I think for me, I just went all over the place. Like 90% of what I have on my portfolio right now is just very recent work, where all the stuff that I was doing in the past was just like, just really out there. So definitely if you're a student, like make sure you find what you love. Like even if that changes, that's totally fine. But at least to have a goal right now to just try to look at the people who are doing the type of work that you want to be doing in like 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think that's
Sorry.
because you can also the advantage you have today too is you can see a lot of the work the artists at specific studios are doing. So it is a nice way to kind of get a glimpse, even though you're maybe not in the industry. You can kind of see, like if you look at the like our art of book, or if you like Blizzard or Riot or that kind of stuff, or if you want to go more for films, you can kind of see the skill set that they're leaning on. Because I think another thing when I was younger, I just thought maybe concept was the same across the board. Each studio is probably looking for something a little different, and you can kind of cue in on that depending on the work they do. The other thing I would say, as a student, also just be aware, whether it's a film, an animation, a video game, there's different parts of production where they may be looking for different things. So, uh, I had gotten stuff where I was like turned down early on, but there's times where it's not necessary to work in the portfolio. It's just the needs of the studio. At the beginning of a project, we're looking for maybe more of the high vis stuff, the really creative, and towards the end of the project, it may be very detailed, technical kind of drawings for the production style stuff. So that also kind of helps just to have that awareness.
Yeah, there's more than just one role out there
Mhm.
that you can aim at for sure.
Yeah.
What would you, I mean, and this can be a broad question, and I know it varies from studio to studio. So maybe just stick to your center of gravity, because everybody's familiar with what you guys are doing, what Santa Monica Studio is doing. What are some of the qualities that you would put forward that, a game studio would be looking for? And I'll pitch the question first to Raf, because I know you're working as art director on God of War. What kind of qualities do you know right now today that you're looking for when you're looking at portfolios? And I'll put in the respective areas you guys work in, both in like kind of design work and then also character art. What are the important things to you?
So I think so. Me and Dela we both interviews for both design and character, so we have a good understanding for the whole spectrum of character art that we can answer this question. But to me, first of all, that I look into portfolios is just the passion. Like there's one thing that is very hard to come through in the portfolios if you're just looking at two images. But like if you have a good grasp of like here's everything, like and I live this thing and I want it, like just where's that passion in the portfolio? And sometimes it's more important than the super impressive, ultra amazing work. It's just like here's I'm working towards this goal, and I know if I get the chance, the opportunity, then this person will, kind of skyrocket into the learning curve. So that to me is like one of the key factors, and the way you show that is literally like make sure you organize your portfolio the right way. You definitely need those kind of high caliber pieces to get yourself in the interview. But once you're there, then it's just door open to like just show everything that you've been up to. And if you're bringing the same pieces that I looked at on your portfolio on ArtStation to an on-site interview, then that to me is a disconnection, right? You need to have a lot more the behind the scenes, like here are all the failures, here's how I learned from them. Like you don't have to put that on your ArtStation, but that's what's going to get you hired. Like a lot of the when we hire people, especially from Gnomon, where they come right out of school, uh, like we know that they have a solid understanding of like technical skills and everything and all that. That's why we usually grab from schools. But if you're coming from outside of the that kind of that school type of scenario, then you have to make sure that you're showing that off. Even if you're coming from schools, like you have to make sure that, especially for that basic the entry point, like you have to have the technical skills on point, and you need to be good at that, and then have a certain uh, spot on pieces that will get you in the studio. And then once you're in there, then you just have to show the passion. So that's kind of the bullet points for me.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you. Della, what would you have to speak into that?
It's really similar. I think anything I'm looking for again is by the time a portfolio comes to me, I think as far as like vetting, just like the foundation skills has already kind of been there. But that's one thing is just do you have the foundation skills? And that thinking is just like if we throw you any kind of concept that you're comfortable to deal with it. But to Raf's point, that's not just the pure selling point by any means. The other part for me that comes into it is just the creativity. And I think that's similar to Raf's, the passion is like, what does the artist bring to it that makes it different? What's that point of view that you give that is completely different? And a lot of the artists that we have at the studio now all have different perspectives, and that really helps. And whether it's a game like 1313 or new IP development or God of War, those all have elements that you need to design that do not exist in the world. You can't just go to a piece of reference. You need to have that understanding and design ability and background and creativity to really kind of come in. And some projects, like if I'm doing a historic period piece, maybe that side of the creativity isn't there for something on like, Rome and the Caesar days. Maybe we're going more for technical production design, kind of one-to-one or realism kind of stuff. but something that we've been working on to look at concepts is just that level of creativity. And then another thing that, one thing I say is always be cool and a good person in interviews too. I think one thing it's just as important is making sure the chemistry in the studio is good for all the artists. And that's one thing Raf and I try and kind of make sure it is a good productive space for everyone to work in. Because we know as artists, the best space that we develop and create in, and we try and kind of keep that culture alive as well. And then to Raf's point about bringing in more than just you have on your online portfolio, I'm a huge fan of seeing process, iterations, ideations, all that kind of stuff. And like Raf said too, not every studio is looking for that. So you can kind of gauge a little bit. Like I would actually have all my ideations, and I'd even have some like stylized stuff. But I go in with just the stuff that matched what that studio was looking for. And if the conversation went there, then I could have that to show. Mm-hmm. And what that also proves is it shows your thought process a little bit, and it kind of proves out how you problem solve. Because one thing I'll be looking at also is there's days even for myself when I'll go and do a review and you got 15 designs and none of them hit. So, okay, you got 15, 0 hit. You got to leave that review and come back the next week with 15 more, and that can be mentally exhausting. But just knowing that someone can work with that and kind of go back to that well, because sometimes it is draining, but that they can just show a little bit of that. Here's how they approach a problem and see that. And even to Raf's point, to me, it's not always 100% on just the finish and the polish, but also if they have that ability as an artist, because if they've got the chance to grow and take feedback, then I think the technical part can come over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll pose this first for your role, Dela, and then I'll pose it for more the center of gravity you work with in the studio, Raf. Someone said, let's think in terms of like, someone out there that's like, I want to pursue learning something. I want to, do the kind of things that you're talking about, Dela, within design. What would be a great place to start for you? What would be like just a go-to, like if you haven't learned this, learn this, go after this thing?
If you're doing characters, just make sure you understand just the core fundamentals. Because I think what that does is just make sure like whatever wild idea you have that you can execute, and basically your ideas aren't going to be hindered by your technical ability to achieve them. So all that stuff, I think understanding 2D foundation, but also the 3D side is very helpful. So I think at a core, those things, I think also just having a love for characters. One thing I think is, let me see how I say this right. So basically, like set that target for where you want to work and what you want to be your goal. I think that's very, very important. But don't limit yourself solely to that. Because my portfolio prior to God of War, you wouldn't look at that and say, oh, this guy's going to work on God of War. None of the stuff was there. But through all the experience I had, it's just trying to develop yourself as a good artist. And the skill set, like I said, the subject matter wasn't there, but the skill set actually helped for everything we needed for that project. So I think as long as you're developed as a good artist, you can be a little more flexible to the roles you get in. Another thing, you have a point of view as a student that evolves as you grow through your experiences as a profession, and doors and projects open up that you hadn't even considered that all of a sudden become the dream projects you want to work on. So I think have your goal, understand where you want to work, research the studio and all that stuff. Have that be your goal, but don't let that be the top pinnacle. Like keep developing yourself past that as an artist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what about for you, Raf? If someone's wanting to be a character artist, wanting to, or say they already are, and they're just wanting to grow in that skill set, what are some of those things that always seem to ring true for you in terms of developing?
I mean, it's a tough question because I even get myself thinking about everything that I've had to do this far, and you almost forget that you've been doing this for a long time, and so sometimes you just have to like think of what would you say for someone for like you just asked the question to yourself like 10 years ago, right? And I do remember like all the challenges and things that you have to overcome that now are come very easily, but back then was just like the first time you put a light on a scene and the sphere just looks like you see the speck and you don't know there's a lot of accomplishments that you can take out of the process. So I think definitely like enjoying the process is like the key, right? Like don't always think about final product, like because that's the one thing, like a character takes a long time, especially if you're learning the process, right? And I think I touched on this before, but if you're just trying to learn the process, then learn the process, right? Don't try to learn hair when you're trying to make an ogre, right? Like just first learn the hair, like play with that, put on a sphere, like spend the time, spend a couple of days just learning the tool, then apply that to something. And I think to me, if someone wants to improve, like just always trying these little things, like today I'm just gonna try to set up a render scene that it's not for a project. It's just because I need to learn that later will come to you and you have a bigger knowledge of like PBR and materials and Arno or V-Ray or like all these tools that you have to learn that you don't have to learn just because you are not a game or you don't want to work for games. Like learning Marmoset, even if you're not a game artist, will add you to your baggage of understanding of the overall picture. Like you will realize that everything is very similar when it comes to 3D packages and 3D in general, right? Like there's a certain set of rules that always repeats no matter what software you're into. If it's ZBrush, except for ZBrush. ZBrush is a little crazy on its own. All the other packages are are very similar. So I guess my tip is just to like always try different things, and then that could apply into like drawing, right? Like if you want to just, that's the question that I always get. Like, do I need to learn how to draw to do 3D? And the answer is like no, but like if you do, of course, it's going to add to your baggage, and you will start seeing things very different. So it's all about like how you grow as an artist, and not so much like the project that you're doing for this ArtStation post that you need to do, or Instagram.
Yeah, that's so helpful because it's to like Dela's point earlier, like as a 2D artist, learning some 3D, although that may have not been required of him, like helped him expand as an artist, so kind of letting your pursuits be broad and allow them to augment what you're focused on. And I think that brings us, actually, you're talking about, characters take a long time. And I think that brings us perfectly into a time to take some questions from the audience. There have been some questions that have been queuing up to this point that I'm going to look at, pick from. And then also, for others that are out there that want a chance to try to get a question through to Dela or to Raf, you can type your questions in the chat. My colleagues who are moderating, Miranda is going to help get some questions to me. But speaking of the amount of time that a character can take, one of the very first questions that came in was, I heard Old Man Kratos took about 1 year to be created from the initial sketches. Is that true?
I mean, it's still a young boy. What are you talking about?
That was in the question. I didn't say that, but yeah. Did that version of Kratos that take an entire year?
I think from my experience, any hero characters take a lot of time because you're going to have feedback from the directors, the narrative, the story people, the art direction, especially if it's a main character for a game, even the combat and all that kind of stuff. And those characters, any main characters, has so much kind of ingredients you have to balance out. And it's trying to get all that and then just put it together in a way that really works across the board, but doesn't sacrifice the design and tear it apart. So, sometimes feedback can feel contradicting and stuff, but it's like, okay, well, if we make this work, how can we do it? And it's just one of those things, whether it's Kratos or any other main characters, is as a team, everyone really wants it to succeed. And they're all trying to get the feedback to kind of have that, but also make sure it cues into like narrative stuff. And, Kratos had a big backstory as well. We're also kind of hoping to take him in the game as well. And Raf was, part of that whole process on this the whole time.
Yeah, short answer is yes. But it's a lot of like what we said, like a lot of back and forth. Like we don't work nonstop for a year. Like we just have to do something, let it live for a while. Then we'll look at back at again when it's like, in the game. That's for every character, right? Like we'll revisit when it's when we have a first version working, and then of course that will inform us what needs to change in the design. So we'll do different revisions on it. Like it's very rare that you get like a one and done type of scenario.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is just the collaboration as well. Like maybe when I was a student, I wasn't aware of how much collaboration went on in the team and how much that actually helps the design. There's times when, too much of a good thing, but overall our studio has been really, really positive. I thought, coming in as a student, like, I just draw this one thing, boom, done, on the next thing. But it's really working with the team, especially at our studio.
What get things done is deadline. Like if we didn't have deadlines, like you could do a character over and over, and people will always have opinions, and things will keep changing. But once you have that E3 coming up, You gotta just pick something.
Well, no,
Yes.
it's just you take all that stuff and just like focus it down to laser. Like, okay,
To the first version that we did.
No, constraints are super important.
Yeah.
Like I would think I heard somebody say once a painting's never finished, it's just to ultimately sort of set loose to head out there. I've got a question that came in from the chat for Raf specifically. And essentially they're saying, as a traditional sculptor and a 3D sculptor, do you ever sculpt in clay and then scan that sculpt into Refine and ZBrush?
I've never done that. I think if I were to do it, I'll probably just do it in ZBrush to begin with, because I'm a lot faster in ZBrush. When I do something in clay, it's just more to live it as is. Like there is that end goal there, and I think every time you try to do it, the translation is not as good, because I think the quality is it's or not even the quality, but the approach is different. And you do certain shapes in traditional that you wouldn't translate as well in 3D. So I haven't done that, and I don't think I will ever will, to be honest.
Gotcha.
Raf, what about scanning it into ZBrush and 3D printing it and then sculpting back on top of it?
I've done that. I've done that because of shitty 3D printers, but hopefully I wouldn't do it in the future.
Well, and I think that the first time I saw it, we had some stuff on exhibit in the Gnomon studio, the Gnomon gallery,
Mm-hmm.
and we had this amazing video. We were showing your 3D printed and painted Yoshimitsu,
Yeah.
and then on the wall on the screen was like just a video of your process of working with your hands.
Yeah.
And how, to me, it was fascinating because you had this 3D sculpt that you pulled out into the physical world, and then it became this very hands-on, artisan kind of a process. Let's see, some additional questions. Let's see. Yeah, there's a question that came in from Ampetite, and they ask, "What is the top thing you notice in a portfolio over anything else?" I think you guys sort of touched on it a little bit, but what's the first thing that stands out to each of you when you initially open up that portfolio for review?
Oh wow.
On my side, I'm looking at some of like the character stuff. We look at a lot of portfolios, and some character stuff is you've seen a lot of times, a lot of repetitive. I think the thing of just getting the artistic kind of style of the artist's work comes across first, and then start to evaluate everything else. But it's one of those things, like if that stands out, that they have a style or take on something that's really unique to me, that comes out. And that's just, again, towards that creative side, because sometimes you can see like a million zombies come through or whatever, but if can someone do a take on that, that's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, a lot of times the portfolio's already coming in, the foundation skills are there, so that's something we'll look at and evaluate where they are at for a level to be in our studio. But if there's a voice that's unique in the designs and stands out, that's the stuff that when you go home later that day or the next week, you still remembers in the back of your head. It's like, oh, I never thought of that, or that's a different take, or some unusual. It's like a new ingredient they've thrown into the mix. And for me, I'll look at that and be like, I wonder what would happen if we gave them this character. Where would they take that? It'd be surprising to me.
Yeah, cool.
I'll probably say the same thing. I think taste is the first thing when you're hiring for a studio, right? But so taste is definitely the thing that you just have to filter or kind of measure against. But I think more as a personal, like in just kind of looking at the level when you look at portfolios, then there's so many things, especially as a character artist, that you just kind of the weight against, right? Like when it's like skill level versus the portfolio, because there's a lot of people that will call themselves like senior character artists or all this stuff, and then the portfolio doesn't go against that, and that's kind of you just have to look for the red flags when you're analyzing a portfolio. So I think as an artist, like people can look at their own portfolios and just kind of see what other people would think when they look at their work. Like just kind of take a step back and it's like, what is the message? Like what's the first message that you get when you look at your portfolio? Is it like, I want to work on X studio and I'm applying to Z and that doesn't match? Like what's the message that you get when you first look at it?
Yeah, very good. We've got a question in from Poseidon Art, and this is a callback to Dela, to your story when you talked about that lack of motivation that you realized you needed to overcome earlier in your education. They just asked, how did you get over that lack of motivation? How did you break through that?
Well, like I said, I think my dad just was like blunt about it. Just, hey, like, it's on you, and just coming to the realization, like, okay, I'm in the driver's seat. It could go positive or negative, whichever way that is, and just that it's just a clear way of just being, hey, the responsibility is on you. You can do this if you want, or you can just mess around and not do this. I think some of it too is, probably at that time, little fatigue comes in. I think another thing that I learned too is you have an idea of what it is like as an outsider or as a student kind of on the outside looking in, but then to really put the time and dedication in to develop yourself as an artist actually takes work. That's what I always kind of joke. You want a shortcut, it's just hard work. That's what it goes in, and you learn it, and all of a sudden what was hard 3 months ago was a little easier, and then it becomes just natural and comfortable. So it was probably a little bit of that, just the real day to day of what it took. But once I just started to apply myself, then the ball started rolling. And I would do things too, like Raf was even saying, just look at your portfolio. I would even just kind of, all right, I just got to be straightforward with myself. I'm realizing maybe if I go out, I'll tell my friends I'll go out with a half hour and hang out with them while I'm in school. I'm always saying that. And then if I look back at it, it turns out I stay out all night. So it's like, okay, well, maybe just hang out, chill on going out for even just a half hour, not cutting my buddies off, but just really being aware how you work. And for that last semester, when I had that class with Jeff Sangali, I'm like, I'm dedicating myself 100% to this. This is what I'm going to do. And I think just being honest with yourself on where you're at, but also what you can accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The other thing I said, motivation is tough because it's so organic. It's not a 1 + 1 = 2 to solve it for the person that asked the question. Just be aware of where it seems to take hold for you and where it dips, and that can kind of help you navigate it as you go out through your career.
Yeah.
Also, having that nickname helps too, Poseidon.
Absolutely, right. We're on brand with the name.
Yes.
This is sort of a hot question right now from let's see. Blood Feast is Land Maine. I hope I'm getting the name right. How much faster will games be put out with the release of Unreal 5? So with all of they're seeing right now with what Unreal 5 can be, this is actually a question I wanted to ask you guys on the stream too, was, based on what we're seeing right now, how do you see what they're saying that this engine is going to do influence games, and maybe even more specifically working with characters for games and what that can mean for the pipeline and the process?
So the short answer for that one is it's just like every new technology, it always pushes the industry forward, but also comes with a lot more requirements from the industry, right? So like I think to the question like how much faster it probably is the same amount of time. The more the technology evolves, the more people want to do, the bigger the games gets, and the more people you need. So almost like the curve goes, like you just get better games with the same amount of time. Now, of course, like if you're a small studio, that will have a huge impact, right? So I do it, like we've been seeing for the past years, like you see a lot more games come out from smaller teams, and that's super exciting for all of us. Like as an artist, as a creative, like you want to have that freedom. So not just the Unreal, but just the industry is always moving towards that. And you see small teams put out games that makes 10 times as more than, bigger studios will ever make. And that's super exciting, right? Like for everybody. So not just the Unreal. The Unreal is a really impressive demo. Like it doesn't change much on the actual day-to-day of execution. It's just like another cool demo that we see every year. There's always those, and of course there's some tools that gets implemented, some doesn't. It's just about pushing the technology. Yeah.
And let's see. Tiger Turtle 6 asks, how often do you, and they're directing the question at you, Raf, how often do you do anatomy studies now versus earlier in your career?
Well, definitely I did way more earlier. By the way, like those nicknames are cool. Tiger. I want that. I did a lot of anatomy studies back then, like just getting, and then that's another thing of the fundamentals. You have to go through that to get that part out of the way, because you just have to get that all, like, it just needs to be automatic when you're doing it. You just can't really think about it when you're executing and a new character and stuff. So like these days I still do it for teaching, because I do a lot of teaching on that side of things. But personal, I like to think that I do it on every single character, but it's not so much a, like, thought study of like an arm or abs or all that. Yeah.
And what about for you, Della? Like in terms of like studying those basics, how do you find that still working into some of your time today?
I try and do it as much as possible on my side, like just figure drawing, all that kind of stuff, and just understanding that anatomy. Like one thing we were doing on a lot of projects I had worked on is we're doing like fantastic design stuff that doesn't exist. But even all the way back on like 1313, it's stuff that you want to feel is believable, even though it's not real. So you layer in that anatomy and those elements that actually give that believability to anyone kind of scene. And it's that mix of the creative with that grounded piece that kind of, to me, make really strong designs. So I do a lot of figure drawing when I can. Unfortunately, some of the spots I was going to on the west side out here closed up. They're doing some online stuff. And what I do with my figure drawing is I work strictly in pen, so I can't undo. So I have to commit to the line of work. And if I make a mistake, it's there. And I do it intentionally with pen when I'm doing figure drawing, so I have to commit. I have to understand. And then I'm a little more free when I do it with pencil, but that understanding's all there, so I can just do the creative side of it with the pencil.
Awesome. Let's see. Gamerboy757 is asking, are there any other IPs you've worked on, Raf, other than God of War?
Yeah. There's quite a few different IPs.
I figured. What are there any that you'd like to highlight, or?
So I worked on like the Mass Effect franchise was a big one. A little bit on the Dragon Age stuff. Like just before that, like a lot of when you're doing freelance work, like you jump on so many different IPs that it's even hard to tell, or even hard to say that I worked on them, because it's like such a small part of it. That when you're full time in the studio, then you really understand what it takes to pull those off. But before that, I worked on a lot of different cinematics for different franchises. But the biggest ones are Mass Effect, and the biggest from the beginning to end, from the conception to the final, was the God of War for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I've got a question from Appetite for Dela. I think my understanding the correct question correctly. They're saying, your style is noticeably different than most, and they're curious to know where you think your creativity comes from, or maybe this is an inspiration-oriented question.
Yeah, I ask myself that question a lot too, because
Yeah.
creativity kind of ebbs and flows. I think for me, I just love searching out a design. There are, like I said earlier, there's times I know exactly what I want, and other times I don't. And sometimes that struggle actually ends up leading to something a little different. One of the things I had done when I had first went to art school is they wouldn't let us start a design until we did 100 iterations. And as a student, I was thinking, well, that doesn't make sense. I know what I want to do already. Why would I do 100 iterations? But what I actually found through doing that is the first 10, everyone in the class had the exact same first 10 for whatever the design was. They started to get a little more unique, and then I would even exhaust my own ideas at like 20. So then I had to really think outside the box. And like, I don't know, let me try this, let me try that. And then what I thought was the best stuff at the beginning actually became the kind of the most mundane or generic, and the stuff that was really pushed where I had to step outside of what I was familiar with actually, to me, got the most traction. So you can do little things like that as exercises for yourself. As far as style, I did go to school through an animation program as well, so a lot of the gesture, that's where actually the blue pencil comes from. But kind of getting that gesture and movement in the clothes, in the costume, so even if it's a still picture, you still get a flow through it. Another approach I kind of do is we studied like some of the classic illustrators, like how Howard Pyle would compose a piece, or Rockwell. And I'll do the same thing even in a character design. I think you can compose a character the same way you compose an environment. as far as like the primary, secondary reads, and create a flow through your character that has the eye go down, up, and then back up to where you want. A lot of times it's also hit and miss. Sometimes I'll do just even little graphic breakdowns of my characters for two reasons. One, to see if it holds up as a design, and the other one is to make sure I haven't mashed 5 character ideas into one, that it's not saying too much, because I think that can kind of push a design in a spot that's maybe not as successful. So it's kind of all of that. Man, creativity comes from everywhere. I really can't say one to one. I'm a big fan of. I'm Native American and grew up kind of with those stories and people telling them, and that kind of history as well. Just when I was younger, I love history. I love just kind of seeing those parts of the world that are like different or unknown or ruins, and that mystery in your brain kind of fills in the rest. So I like all that stuff as kind of inspiration to me, and maybe more thematically than actually for a specific subject matter. But I just kind of like exploring the what ifs on all that stuff, and hopefully it translates. And to Raf's point earlier, I don't show all the work. There's a lot of it that doesn't come out good as well, and you got to kind of just be okay with that as an artist, and it's a step to kind of move you forward, and you increase. So the bad stuff I just don't show.
But it's all part of the process. Yeah. I've got a question for Raf from, let's see, Issy Drawu. And they say, Raf, I'm almost finishing high school in Brazil and want to follow this career. Do you know any courses or colleges you recommend?
I don't have a specific one, but I mean, first of all, you need to kind of sharpen your English skills, and then once you do that, there's it opens up a lot more options. Like I think Gnomon has a lot of online stuff that you can take. YouTube is a great source of tutorials and just to get the basics down as well. In Brazil, there's a couple good ones, but you just have to like be a little more specific. There's a couple like good ZBrush courses and things like that. There's a couple different schools. Just talk to the people who are working in the industry, and they will kind of point you to the more recent ones, because I am not as well aware of what's up to date in Brazil. I have friends that give uh, classes that are on the side, but if you're looking for it from beginning to end, you have to look for more of the school options. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think to your point as well, Raf, you had mentioned some of the online options with Gnomon, and I would say that under the current social distancing circumstances, now we've moved our entire spring term or summer term online. So we're using our online platform, which means all of our individual courses are going to be available. And individual online classes can also be taken by people living outside of the country.
Nice.
So if you're looking for something like that, that would be a live online class with an actual working industry professional. So whatever they're teaching, it's something they do professionally on a day-to-day basis. And a little later, I can let anybody interested how they can reach out about that. But let's move it back into the questions. Let's see. We just finished that.
The one last thing I'll just add to
Yeah.
Adam is just that make sure you have your basics down. Like don't drop into a full course like right out of high school if you've never tried anything. Like you can find a lot of things online just to get the grasp of the industry and the softwares and the tools. So when you're going to invest the money, especially if you from outside of the US, that every bit of the investment will count. Then make sure that you're ready for that commitment. Like don't just drop thousands of dollars on education without you having that commitment. That's all to add.
Super important advice. All right, so let's see. I've got a question from let's see, Huyu. Question for Dela. You said that you worked in 3D a little. Do you ever use it to get different ideas that wouldn't happen on paper?
Yes, and it's pretty minimal just with the speed I'm going. So I'll do a little bit. Um, I did more of it at Lucas, and back at Lucas, the difference between the way the studio was set up on 1313 was here it's very specific. We have a character team on the concept side that I lead, but then the environment side is led by a different lead. At Lucas, we all did concepts and environments. There wasn't the distinction. So I did a lot more on the environment side there. And that's kind of where I learned my chops. And Star Wars was a great way for me to learn 3D because a lot of it is like just kind of like primary shapes and then set dressed with secondary elements. So there I did it one to inspire ideas. But another thing that I did as well and is I could actually export the game geography into Maya and then make sure that the designs really fit the metrics of the game. And again, I'll kind of check that just to make sure I don't do a concept that's great, but really can't be applied to the project. So for both of those reasons, nowadays I don't do a whole lot, but in the studio space, or even like our personal project, Raf just turns it out faster than I can even say a design, and it's just kind of that back and forth happens there, and a lot of stuff kind of comes from the creativity that I see Raf doing on this stuff as well.
All right, thank you. Really practical question coming in from Giles Theme. With so many distractions nowadays, especially with all of us at home, with so many distractions nowadays, how can we get some time management tips from artists for each of you?
That's a tough one. Not just now. I think now, especially, it's just showing, exposing a lot of us. I feel like, but even before, it's just time management is such an important thing that you have to have. When you have kids, like you learn a lot more about that because they take 85% of your time, and they also work on schedules. So like even for them, it's very important. So you learn to schedule yourself a lot more. But I've been doing it, since the beginning of my career. And the way I go about it is just I set myself long-term goals and short-term goals, and I just hold myself accountable for those dates. So let's say I want to execute on X amount of projects in like a month. Then if if the weeks go by and I'm not getting close to that, then I need to, like I would do it on any professional work, I'll need to, evaluate myself and either put more time in or just be honest with myself and just say, okay, that's not achievable, and work with achievable goals. Because that's the second most important thing to avoid the failure or the, getting frustrated or not motivated, is because when you have unrealistic goals, then you're working towards something that you're not going to be able to achieve. And and it's same thing with like weight loss or working out, right? You just have to work with achievable goals, knowing that you're going to put what's doable for you, or what's fun. Like same thing for working out. What's fun for you? Like it's only 30 minutes, so I'm just not going to spend more than 30 minutes. And this way, I know I'm going to be consistent every day or every couple of days, because that's what matters the most. Like being able to be consistent. And if you're just burning out on the first week, then the next week you're just going to sleep all week because you burned out. So for me, it's just schedule, be consistent, and be realistic with the times that you're putting in.
How about for you, Dela?
Yeah, it's the same. Like Raf said, it's always things that we still are trying to deal with ourselves. The great thing about being in the office and doing that, whether it's something in the office, is we get to also kind of have a back and forth with our producers as well. They kind of help, kind of keep an eye on that as well with us, so we have a good partnership there. Personally, I kind of just will say, well, what do I want to get done this week? And I try and give myself a loose plan, because the things that I always find happen as soon as I get that plan, and this may be what the question was kind of about, is as soon as I set something down, 5 things that I hadn't even planned to come in right away and to kind of take the focus. But even just having that loose plan can kind of help me, that even if that happens, okay, I'll eventually get back and work to it. And then, just having goals on what you want to do. And I think to Raf's point, I try and keep it where it's fun and loose. It's not for me like a make or break, because then I don't walk away like, oh man, I messed up, I didn't get it. It's like, well, you still got the time now, so sit down and do it. And I think the best thing is the planning is good, but just get down and start doing it. It's like Raf said, I think the approach is specific to art, but also the way you deal with life. Like just start doing it. The more you get in the habit of it, the more you get familiar, it'll be easier, and the time will come. But it's tough. I don't have a one-to-one answer for that.
Yeah, I think speaking of time management, the time has flown. I think we're coming up. We're kind of at time in that sense. We're coming up at about 9:30. Maybe we'll conclude with just if there's a way to briefly answer the question in terms of what are you working on for yourself right now? Like, what's a growth edge that you're developing in your skill set. And it's okay if it's a simple short answer or something like that.
I'm gonna go Dela.
Yeah, well, I think part of it creatively is like the project that Raf and I are kind of kicking around right now. That's a nice thing that really kind of keeps me inspired after hours. That's great. A little more trying to get back even more into 3D for myself, and then some other stuff is as you become like a lead or an art director. We were trained in art. We didn't get a full training in management, so any opportunities to kind of help on that sphere, so it can just continue to be as successful as possible with the team, and then so that drives forward in a positive, productive way that still kind of gets the quality that we need. So learning that kind of stuff, it's not 100% art related, but that's the stuff I'm kind of.
Oh yeah, super important though. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, for me, is there's a lot of things that I want to do. Not enough time in the day that I have that I can do it. So it's always really focusing on what's the next step and what's gonna make me happy with my art and my craft. So I think it's just more improving on that. There's so many super amazingly talented artists all over that if you start looking for the next thing, there's always something new that you can learn. And I try to do that every day, just a little bit every day, and go from there. There's no major evil plan behind any of this. It's just day by day, after day, getting a little bit better.
Yeah,
that's part of the fun too. Yeah. Well, guys, I want to thank you so much for taking the time with us. It's a real treat just to actually basically just get to sit with you, look at some of your personal work, look at this amazing side project that you're developing. Looking forward to hearing more about that. But thank you so much for taking the time tonight for being with us, guys. Oh yeah, the chat has shown a lot of love coming in. Everybody's throwing up everything they can on the chat.
Thank you, Poseidon, Tiger Turtle, amazing. Zolfo, you're the man.
Great to have him, Ray and Miranda and Josh too. It was a great talk with all of you, and even the behind the scenes stuff. I really appreciate it.
Concerned Rabbit, thank you.
If you're ever looking for inspiration for design ideas, good advice from tonight is just go look at the Twitch feed and look at the names. Right?
We should do it. Yeah, we should do a stream someday. Just doing characters for the names. It'd be awesome.
That would be amazing. I would totally take you up on that. But yeah, just a few parting words as we wrap up, guys. And thank you so much for the love you're showing on the chat. We have got regular programming here on our Twitch feed, ranging from events like this one tonight to art jams every Wednesday from 9 a.m. to 12 noon with our creative director, Josh Herman, as well as virtual info sessions for prospective students. We'd love to see you back here again. In fact, one of the very next events we have coming up is a session with Sonia Christoph. And Ray, can you give me just a little information about that session, the next event coming up with her? Thursday, 7:30, so 1 week from tonight. And we're going to be talking about, it's going to be for 3D generalists. And so this is a person that's going to be working a lot of different areas in 3D, which is incredibly useful and in demand in the industry. So definitely tune in for that next week. Also, if you're curious about Gnomon and the educational offerings that we have and whatever ways that we're offering to help you level up your skills, to train for the industry, my colleague Ray can share in the chat a link that you go to. It's just a simple thing you can fill out online. Provide some information, and one of our admissions advisors, an actual human being, will reach out to you. And all of our admissions advisors are there to provide coaching, advice, portfolio reviews before you ever, apply to anything. They're there. And we've got an info session stream coming up on Tuesday. That's the one with admissions, correct, Ray? Oh, that's Jared. Yeah. So Jared Kraszewski, who is a creature artist, also a fantastic ZBrush sculptor. We're going to be having an info session with Jared on Tuesday at 10 a.m. So you can tune back in here on Tuesday at 10 to do that. And stay tuned for additional content coming. We'd love to see you back over here. We want to continue providing things, even in this time of all of us being at home, being on our workstations. We want to provide inspiration. We want to provide practical resources for artists. And as I mentioned earlier, all of our classes are now online at Gnomon. We have a proven and highly effective online platform that we've already been using before the pandemic hit. We're utilizing that for our classes, so there's no better time to sign up for an individual class during the summer term, or to even start into a full-time program at Gnomon. It's a great way to start into that online. There's some great benefits to doing it that way. So any of those things that you're interested in, you can hit up the link that Ray's sharing in the chat. You can fill out that form. And Dela and Raf, we look forward to seeing you guys around here again soon. And what's your guys' handles on Instagram, or if anybody wants to follow you out there who hasn't started already?
Mine is Grassetti, Rafael Grassetti. If you're not following, go there. Yep. And thank you. Thanks for inviting us. This was fun.
Absolutely, our pleasure. And Dela, anybody that wants to follow your work out there?
Yeah, Dela Longfish on Instagram, Dela Longfish on ArtStation. And yeah,
great.
Again, it was awesome tonight. Really appreciate it, guys.
Cool. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for the inspiration and for the information, guys. We'll see you soon.
All right.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.